It's 420 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is here. Welcome to the Cannabis Show. You guys, nice job. Nice job. I'm Janae Burris, and here's your host, Jake Brown. Come on, give me some, y'all. Give me a little bit.
Thanks, Janae. Thanks to all of you tuning in, whether you're listening to the show or watching on our brand new YouTube channel. This is the Cannabis Show, where we talk all things weed.
Hashtag all things weed.
And that's the serious marijuana news, along with the fun stuff as well. And if you visit thecannabis.co right now, you can get the latest on DC protesters arrested for handing out joints on 420, and again yesterday at the Capitol.
Ooh, there's a great piece spotlighting the accomplishments of cannabis staff Alicia Wallace and others who received honors for their in-depth reporting on all things cannabis related over the past year. Congratulations,
Yay!
guys!
Congratulations!
All right.
You can also read my stoned review of the new Rick and Morty virtual reality game that got absolutely no awards.
Jake, I assume most of your reviews are stoned.
Absolutely, and you can also see why President Trump's proposed border wall won't stop the flow of drugs into our country. But right now, you're here with us. Janae, did you wind up having your 420 potluck?
No, womp, womp, womp. Unfortunately, I was not able to organize a proper potluck. I know, sad. I'm trying to eat better though. No starch, no processed stuff, 93% less ice cream. And being on a diet during 420 is like being celibate on Grindr. You can have fun, just not all of the fun. I was uncalled for.
The show is a lot of fun, but honestly, it's hard to compete with the Yin Yang Twins. So it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know that many Yin Yang Twins songs, right? And then, but they existed in that like rare rap era where everybody was just jumping on and doing cameos on everyone's songs.
Yeah.
Like, what would you, like, if you think Yin Yang Twins, what are you thinking of?
Wait, I got them all mixed up with like, I always think, yeah, but that's Lil Jon. And in my mind, that's enough. That's the same.
I think they might have been on that though. It was like nonstop them doing other people's songs. So yeah, I got to give it up to the Yin Yang Twins. Now let's go to the week in weed. All right. Well, it feels like 420 was a lifetime ago. It's still making headlines here in Denver, as this week Mayor Michael Hancock called a special press conference to address the trash left in the wake of the annual rally at Civic Center Park. Pictures taken on April 21st showed what looked like explosions of weed-themed garbage strewn about, leaving me reminiscing of the days I still went to music festivals.
Okay, and on November 1st, there's Halloween-themed garbage. After Comic-Con, there's geek-themed garbage. And after St. Patrick's Day, there is green vomit everywhere. Literally everywhere.
If it's just green vomit, you're okay, I think. Those that were responsible for the event stressed that they were given until the 21st to have cleanup finished, with organizer Miguel Lopez claiming a man with a knife was tearing up trash bags before wielding said knife at volunteers. Thankfully, no one was injured and no arrests were made at that time, but DPD reported that they either ticketed or arrested 48 attendees, with Mayor Hancock noting, quote, "We always want to be mindful of the city not promoting lawlessness," unquote.
Garbage in the park, public consumption of cannabis, a random unrelated shooting in a completely different part of the neighborhood. Sounds like a typical Thursday in Capitol Hill, if you ask me.
For now, the mayor has ordered a quote-unquote deep dive review of the permit, so one of the largest 420 celebrations in the world could be coming to an end.
No.
This is just the no episode for today.
A lot of sadness in this one.
In other Denver news, here's something to be happy about. The city council approved later hours for dispensaries, allowing them to stay open until 10 p.m. or 2 hours before the average Taco Bell closes in the metro area.
Oh God, Jake, so sad, so sad. You still eating Taco Bell? How about we keep the dispensaries open until midnight and we sell Taco Bell there? Solved it. Gosh, I'm solving problems on this show. It's crazy.
When I first started off in the industry, there was a lady that came around with burritos every day. We made sure that her kids got to college.
Yes, let's work together.
The extension looks to help Denver compete with smaller surrounding cities like Edgewater and Glendale that allow dispensaries to stay open until midnight. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for the first city to approve 24-hour dispensaries. It's used to treat insomnia, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, typical stoner forgetting to buy your supplies. supplies. Hello, pick up toilet paper while you're out there.
Now let's move to Philadelphia, where a bust of a big pot party has a prominent politician calling for legalization. That was a lot of peas.
Nice.
Mayor Jim Kenney called the bust that led to 22 arrests and the seizure of over 50 pounds of herb, quote-unquote, overkill, and expressed his desire for marijuana to be legalized in the Keystone State, so police resources could be sent on something besides enforcing pot laws. Now, if that name sounds familiar, this is the same Jim Kenney that tweeted people shouldn't, quote, smoke weed so obviously that you scare olds my age, unquote, back in January when a ban on sitting on walls in a posh park in Philadelphia was introduced because nearby residents claimed that it led to pot use.
Man, no. Continue to hide in the shadows, consumers. You're scaring Pawpaw. This is why we need to start featuring a Cannabis coming out. Come on now, Cannabis coming out, party steak. The olds are just afraid of it because they don't know enough about it. Get the olds in there.
Let's get these olds in there. I don't think they like being called olds either. I don't think that's like the most endearing term, but if it's okay with Jim Kenney, it's okay with me, right? Now let's go to Alicia Wallace, the Cannabis award-winning business and policy writer, with this week's quick hit.
Whether PTSD will become a qualifying condition for medical marijuana in Colorado is in the hands of Governor John Hickenlooper. A bill to allow doctors to recommend medical cannabis for people diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder cleared the legislature this week, putting it on the path to the governor's desk. If signed, it would represent the first addition to the state's qualifying medical marijuana conditions since the law was implemented in 2001. Senate Bill 17 heads to Hickenlooper with amendments that lawmakers describe as guardrails for minors. Responding to concerns about marijuana's effects on the developing brain, the bill was amended to ensure that one of the two recommending doctors for minor patients be a family physician, pediatrician, or child and adolescent psychiatrist who is closely involved in the family's medical plan. For the Cannabist, I'm Alicia Wallace with this week's Quick Hit.
Thanks, Alicia. Our first guest this week is the new editor-in-chief here at The Cannabist. Welcome to the show, Alex Pascarello. Hey! Thanks so much. Did I say the name right? That was nerve-inducing.
That's why I've been going with Alex P.
Okay, so
My new identity.
I thought that was your rap name.
Yeah, and my email address.
Okay. Welcome to the show. I like to think of it as a rite of passage.
Beautiful set.
Thank you. Well, we also just had a different rite of passage, 420 here in Colorado.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
All work and no play is how it was for us here. By cosmic twist of fate, the Colorado State Legislature was debating two marijuana-related bills on the day of.
And they're doing this, just right across from one of the largest 420 rallies of the world.
That's right, and one was the so-called pot club bill, which no longer includes pot clubs, and the other was a more serious bill, SB 17, which would add cannabis to the list for treatment of PTSD, the first addition to that list since 2000 or 2001. So
yeah, medical marijuana has been very fixed here in Colorado. There are several states that have approved PTSD, and this is something that is petitioned year after year after year. Is there any headway there?
Yeah, it is moving to the governor's desk. The holdup was for treatment of minors suffering from PTSD, and so there's an amendment on there that makes it harder for them to get it. That's something that's going to have to be considered at a later date. So it's going to the governor's desk now.
Interesting. I feel like, the one thing that they're always very cautious about is these kind of gray area, like severe pain, for example, or how do you determine who has, PTSD? There isn't a bright line qualifier on there. So it looks like that may not be an option for younger patients in Colorado?
At this stage, the bill going to the desk is for adults. So
adults only. Interesting. So that'd be 21 and up then?
Yeah.
Okay. So you spent 420 covering politics.
Yeah, and the news on 184, which was the pot club bill, was a state senator tried to tack on an amendment that would ban pot churches from
of course.
Yeah, here in Colorado.
Wait, so like it feels like you're on the pot church beat here. Like you have really dove in.
Yeah, it was yeah, definitely not how I sort of, I knew it would be a trial by fire.
Sure.
I didn't imagine that spirituality would be the first the first
hellfire.
deep dive. Yeah. But
wait, so you actually went to a cannabis church?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How did you like elevationism? Are you converting?
So I did go to the International Church of Cannabis for their on 420 for their 420 celebration and some of the events leading up before and after.
What's a service like?
Well, their concept on 420 more sort of resembled a TED Talk. They had a NPR host, NPR One host there doing interviews with local leaders and politicians. And then as the holy hour approached, there was a moment of silence and a lot of Bics flicking in the
Are they attached to the pews? Are there pews?
So there are pews actually, and one of the great details is they've so there's the pews with the old hymnal holders, and then they put little ashtrays in. And then
so it just reminds me of like a car from the 70s, where it's like there's still ashtrays in this thing.
And but it was sort of a robust crowd, I would say. They did have sort of. The city put the kibosh on it being a public event, and so at the last minute they had to make it a restricted private event, which I think, obviously limits turnout. And
of course, yeah. I mean, I know, Janae, you were supposed to do comedy there.
Supposed to. They're lost.
That might be my favorite supposed to ever. So it feels like they're still very much trying to find, like any new religion, I suppose, find their bearings.
Yeah,
I shouldn't laugh.
No, well, the spirituality will continue to be sussed out as they move forward. But
how was the choir? Do they have a choir?
Not yet, but that's in the works.
Oh, no, that's not church then.
So yeah, so it was a very busy 420, and then of course as I arrived back from the ceremony, stinking like weed but not high, there were gunshots fired outside of our building here, so it was just another day in Denver.
You got it all.
Yeah.
So your family is now here. You've relocated to Denver.
That's right, I'm back.
But you started here, exactly.
Yeah.
You're back. What was kind of your perception being on the East Coast and looking in at Colorado and this great kind of experiment?
Yeah, when I left in 2006, the movement was strong, but I think the concept of recreational legalization just seemed so far out.
Sure.
And as I've had been coming back to Denver 3, 4, 6 times a year, the city of Denver seems to have just sort of been perfumed by marijuana. I think it's sort of the first, some of my first instincts and reactions to it. I mean, coming back from the airport down I-70, you used to smell dog food.
Oh yeah.
And now you smell weed.
It's crazy. My dog would start salivating.
Right?
Now I'm the one salivating.
That
it's
dog
real
food factory
weird. We're both just like, oh yeah, the dog food.
Yeah.
That's become an issue too, because now they're working on all these bills to deal with odor remediation, and Purina's like, we're gonna have trouble with that. So you can smell the city becoming more marijuana friendly.
Yeah. So in this general sort of perfume around the city, and then my experience has also been covering the ski industry and up in the mountains, and watching from that perspective, you see both sort of the hyper local nature of legalization and also sort of the public image of it as, I've been on, these caravans going up on the, the services that take you up to the resorts, and guys from Texas are, Googling, trying to figure out where to score, and where to go
the weed
at their various resorts, and, and then seeing how towns or resorts handle it differently.
Sure.
You tend to see where there's an actual town, like Telluride or Aspen. There's sort of a robust scene, and
I look at like Crested Butte as an example, or like sure. Gunnis and Good Lord, they went all in. I think.
Yeah, and where it's more sort of resort based. Your Vail and Beaver Creeks, you've seen sort of the shops sort of limited to that. Whatever they're calling it, the Green Mile, right by the exit on US 6.
Right, wherever they can kind of stash them.
Yeah, and so following from afar, seeing that, it's been a fascinating, sort of fascinating to watch my home state develop this industry, and also this reputation as people try and figure out if they want to make it part of their vacation, part of their holiday.
Which has to be interesting because you have a background as a travel writer. You've been all over the world, and so here you have kind of this boon of pot tourism.
Yeah.
How do you approach that in terms of being a consumer yourself?
Well, first of all, I approached it by pitching the national magazines I'd been working for, and no one wanted to touch it.
Really?
So, there's that.
Okay.
But, I think coming to the Cannabist, we're gonna dominate that space. Just an anecdote. This morning, I flew in from the East Coast, and the woman behind me on the plane was prattling on about how she tacked an extra day onto her business trip to have a session with her friend. Yeah, and so like these types of sort of add-ons on the business trips to choosing your ski vacation. So we're gonna cover that stuff and try and figure out what the numbers are, who's doing it, and what is available to people out there, and how we can be sort of tour guides.
Yeah, because I think that's sometimes in Colorado we lose sight of what's going on. Like, what's the East Coast pot scene like now? Because I know there's states that are kind of various medical laws, but it seems like East Coast has been a little slow, whereas out here in the Wild West, people have been really going after it.
Yeah, well, it varies. I've been in New York for quite a while, and the scene there was a delivery scene, as far as I knew. And
some things never change.
Yeah.
Last time I was there, it was very much a delivery. You send a text, the guy with the backpack shows up, and then they just go boom, 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 boom.
That's right. And if you want it faster, stay in Manhattan. Don't call from Brooklyn. And it's very much text-based. As our guy was, texting us, happy first day of fall, and have a great Halloween. Like it's this, this whole sort of marketing. Yeah, it was.
I don't even send my mom that message.
Don't forget Free Brownie Fridays.
Do you use any code words when you text?
Yeah.
No.
Just straight up.
So there are records of
those.
Yeah, I was going through them before I came on, just to be sure that was the case. The guy comes over.
In New York City, it's changed so much too, because it used to be, the stop and frisk capital of the world, and politics change a little bit there.
Well, I was there during the stop and frisk era, and so there is.
Were you stopped and frisked?
Never, and that's sort of the
the points.
Yeah, that is
maybe not the best policy.
Yeah, that is sort of the mind melt of it, I guess. Reading the newspapers and seeing how one portion of the city was being treated versus, never worried about it, in Nolita. And so that definitely was a problem until de Blasio came in. Might still be a problem. That's part of the great legalization, experiment, is being part of that, ending those practices that are unfairly persecuting members of our community. But
people of color, disproportionately targeted. Now we're seeing Colorado arrests are definitely dropping. You had people arrested at the rally. I'm not exactly sure why. They're probably up to some shenanigans, but mostly it's a ticketable offense now.
Well, we watched as one of the fences came down and people were streaming.
You guys watched as
we were watching from the corner over here.
Producer Vince has video of it. That's perfect. It's playing right now. If you're listening to this podcast, you're missing out on some quality gate crashing. So there were people that were breaking in. The other thing that I loved is that there was the 360-degree video that was that Vince had a hand in, and it looked like a bunch of very young people, high school or college-aged kids, that were smoking a giant joint. And I've heard a lot of concerns over that. You know, were there minors that were at the park, or?
Not to our reporting.
Okay.
You know, certainly if fences were broken down, that's where that, you know, that's where kids could come to be in there. That the lines were around and quite long, and I think that frustration is what led to that. You know, definitely as I was out of here to go down to the church and it was approaching 4 o'clock, people were definitely getting pretty frustrated. But
yeah, I mean, anytime you're waiting an hour just to smoke pot, I mean,
right?
You know, that's a rough gambit there. Yeah. What's something about you that our listeners might not know? What's a fun Alex P fact?
Wow. Well, I think I put out there I'm a bit of a hyperactive hypo and a sporto, and
okay.
I think, you know, I'm sort of your sporty stoner, I guess, would be in the context of this show.
Your skateboard, you skateboard, which I'm impressed with. The only time I've ever done it, I hurt myself.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. It's snowboard, skateboard. It's sort of in that order.
Sandboards.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Board sports.
Have you wakeboarded?
You know, I have not wakeboarded. Yeah.
All right, Cannabis listeners, go out, get Alex P on a wakeboard.
Yeah. The problem is
Colorado's great for it.
Yeah. The problem is the boat. I don't have a boat.
Okay.
Which is really the hang-up. So yeah. So you know. I'm glad to be back in Colorado, where you know, I can sit on my exercise ball in the office and not be looked down upon. That was definitely something that in New York was sort of out there, but
okay. Colorado more progressive than New York. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex, so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're gonna have more with you in just a minute, but first, let's get to our own deconstructor of doobies, Professor Pat, with this week's entry into the new Cannabist lexicon.
Bud tender. Like a bartender or pharmacist, except for the weed, this is the person who works at the counter of your local dispensary, whose job it is to offer suggestions and answer questions, as well as showcase a shop's products to customers. Quote, that shop had ace bud tenders. They recommended Durban Poison for an all-day concert.
Thank you, Professor. Our second guest just won a High Times Cannabis Cup for his CBD-infused chocolate bar. Please welcome back to the Cannabis Show, Bob Esino. Good to see you, sir. How you been?
I'm great. How are you?
Welcome to the couch.
Thank you for having me back.
Were you out in California for the Cup?
I was not. No, we were.
Good for you.
We were here.
You're holding it down in the hometown.
Mm-hmm.
It was a gorgeous cup. I think it was redesigned this year. Alex Gray did the art, but congratulations.
Thank you.
So what
Thank
was the
you.
bar? Because you guys have so many different offerings.
Our Black Cherry CBD bar is the only one right now that has CBD in it.
Okay.
We've seen that bar get more popular and grow over the last year, so we're kind of redesigning it. We're upping the milligrams. We're going to do a 100 milligram THC and 100 milligram CBD on the adult use side.
It's like a 1-to-1 ratio?
Yeah, it's all 1-to-1 ratio, and then on the medical side, we're going to bump the 50-50 to 200-200.
So Colorado has some rules about how much THC, you know, a chocolate bar can hold, correct?
On the adult use side,
Right.
it's capped at 100 milligrams of activated THC.
So you could do 1,000 milligrams of CBD if you wanted. It's not.
We're actually coming out with products that do that. We're coming out with a number of new products under our wellness line. One of those is going to be a 1-to-10 ratio THC to CBD. That's in a syringe form. It's for really medical patients, right?
Sure.
It's not an edible. It's more a wellness application. But each syringe will have, I believe, 10 milligrams of THC and 100 milligrams of CBD.
And so I want to clarify for people that aren't familiar, we're not talking about a syringe with a needle attached to it.
Yeah.
It's just a delivery system.
A delivery system,
But I think
correct.
that people still go, oh yeah, they're out there with their
shooting up the pots.
Shooting up pots.
No. Thanks, Smart.
All right, so we clarified
Sorry,
there's no injecting any cannabis or any cannabinoids.
No.
So you do a few different products, though. You guys do the gummies, you do chocolate bars, but this wellness line I think is really interesting because we've talked a lot about CBD recently. That's kind of the hot topic.
Yeah.
So how do you go just into CBD? Are you guys, I mean, is that something that you're pursuing? Are you looking at doing, distribution?
Yeah, a couple of different things, right? We've understood the health benefits of CBD for a while, right? I mean, you've started to see reports coming out, and CBD really kind of hit the scene a couple of years ago, right? And we've had products, we've been R&Ding products. CBD has just been difficult to get. Since Colorado changed their laws and allowed people to grow hemp, right, which is still kind of confusing because everybody growing hemp is growing hemp to make oil to give back to the industry. The rules and regulations around that are constantly changing, just like all the rules and regulations around this industry. But the ones around CBD are becoming a little bit more convoluted, right? So,
well, sure. I mean, there was just, Denver came out, the Denver Department of Health said, hey, if you've got any CBD products that are in your dispensary that don't come from, seed to sale tracking, those have to go?
It's not seed to sale. It's from what I understand, it's them approving the process. And I guess I step back and I look and like, what other industry in the world do you have to prove where your ingredients come from, right? Where you have to, where your city, gets to go to your ingredient manufacturer and check them out. I would assume that most places, even CBD, whether it's coming from this country, from this state, from out of the country, that there are rules in place to make sure that those products coming into Colorado are clean, they are safe, right? Sure. They've come through customs. They were manufactured in facilities, and even when they get here, typically, us in Colorado, we've bought almost all of our CBD locally. But if it's coming into the state and Colorado companies are doing their job and testing it and make sure that it's clean, that there's no residual solvents, that there's no pesticides, that there's no filth, mold, or mildew, all the tests that we have to go through, and then we use that as an ingredient in our products. That should be enough, So these
Colorado's really
these
fun
new
in that
rules
way, though, right?
from out of left field are a bit shocking, and I look at that. There's CBD and hops. Do you think the microbrewers in Denver have to? Is Denver Health Department finding out where the hops are grown, and they're going in and
I want to know where these hops are grown.
Talking to the farms and CBD comes from other items, and for them to kind of single out hemp-derived CBD seems a little bit disingenuous, but.
Interesting. Okay, so you have CBD products.
Correct.
We've had people on the show that distribute their CBD products nationwide. You are in 3 states. Are you shipping CBD right now?
How do I answer that?
Honestly?
We have CBD in California. That was acquired in California.
You can take place in the SoCal Cannabis Cup?
Yes, there you go. We've been on a path for the last couple of years to do CBD products. We have a kitchen that's not licensed in the cannabis space, right? So it's a kitchen where we can do food. Okay. CBD was on that list. CBD products were really what we were going to focus on. And every time we get close, new rules and regulations come out that make us pull back and go, all right, let's wait and see kind of what the how things fall out and come into focus here in the next couple of months, which we've done again, right? You've got
you seem like you're in the wait and see game because you've got you guys are active in a lot of places. So you've got Nevada, you've got California, you've got Colorado, but there's other states where you're looking at operating?
Yeah, we've got deals done in Oregon, Michigan, Massachusetts. Those are done. Puerto Rico, just waiting.
Puerto Rico's on medical, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think.
Fair enough.
Well, they're all kind of in flux, but most of them are medical. Most of the places we're going, it starts with medical, and people are now just bringing on the adult use side. But we've got tentative deals now in another half a dozen states, a couple of different countries. So we're expanding rapidly, which is nice, and it's kind of hard to get your arms around sometimes.
Yeah, I will get. So there are other countries. They're willing to, ship out the CBD. They become kind of thought leaders. Do you think the U.S. will catch up?
I hope so. I think very quickly we are about to lose our foothold, right? You've got Canada doing what Canada's doing and exploding.
Sure.
They are about to be the international hub here very quickly. You've got Mexico changing their outlook on cannabis. We could easily be trapped between two countries that are going to kick our ass.
And that's just in North America.
That's North America. But we kind of took that first leap. At least the states have. Federally, we haven't. But if the feds don't catch up, we are going to miss out on a big market opportunity, for this country, tax revenue, jobs. If we can kind of catch that lightning in a bottle and be first to market and be first with imports, exports, and be the first country moving in that direction, I think it will help us, but it doesn't seem like we're on that path.
Speaking of lightning in a bottle, we had you on in April of 2015, and so it was a few months after recreational marijuana had really taken hold here, and since then I feel like the edibles market's changed dramatically. That I always remembered seeing lots of like pastries, cookies, brownies. Now I feel like we're going the way of the chocolate, the way of the gummy. What changed?
A couple of things. I think testing probably has a lot to do with that, right? Because you've got shelf life on certain items. So when you're held up days and days and days and days with the additional testing that we have to do, it cuts down on the shelf life of products like a brownie or a cookie.
Sure. When you say additional testing, for people that aren't familiar, what is that? Are you going?
One of our biggest expenses is testing. We test our flower. We grow our own flowers for smokable products, right? We do extracts.
So like cannabis flower, not like baking flour.
Yeah, no, cannabis flowers.
Just want to make sure we specify.
So we grow cannabis that we turn into our award-winning vape pens and shatter. The flowers have to be tested, right? If we're going to use those in our products, the flowers have to be tested coming out of the garden. Once we get...
Okay, so there's step one, test the flower.
There's step one, and that allows us to use it and now extract it. So all of our flowers get extracted. We don't sell any flower to the wholesale market. So everything that comes into my building...
You guys are just basically juice and weed.
Yeah. I tell people we're resin farmers, right? They come in, they like, look at all these beautiful plants, and I'm like, see that fuzzy stuff? That's all we want. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So everything gets extracted, and from the extraction, we have to get it tested again. You test for residual solvents, you test for potency, you test for contaminants, right? And then that has to get approved. Then you can put it into products, and then that gets tested again.
Wait, so there's 3 stages of testing that you have to go through before an edible product can be sold to people.
Correct. And then, it gets cleared by the state before we can put it on the shelves. I actually just had a Canadian reporter, asking me questions about that. I'm like, the products in Colorado are safer and cleaner than they've ever been. Right? They're properly packaged, they're properly labeled, they're properly dosed, they're properly tested. You are not getting better cannabis products anywhere else in the world, right? We are still, in my mind, #1 for the type of products that we put on the market. Colorado is leading the way.
Now, when you started off as edibles company primarily, when did you realize, hey, we've got vape pens, we've got the shatter, all of these different extracts would be such an integral part in not only dosing edibles but become their own products entirely?
Really, right about the time adult use hit, recreational hit, we could see the market trending, right? We could see that concentrates were becoming a bigger part of it. OPEN kind of started that, right? You see the success that they had. People were looking for a more convenient way, especially with the rules and the laws that we're still struggling with, obviously, here in Colorado about public consumption and where can you consume, and you have to join a church now if you want to consume in public, it seems like. So
testify.
Yeah. It's become a very discreet way to consume cannabis, and I think that kind of started the shift from flower into edibles and concentrates. But now I think people just enjoy it, right? If you really want to consume cannabis and know what you're taking,
sure,
an edible is the way to do it. You know, you can break off one of my squares and know that that's 10 milligrams of THC. And if you want to take 10 milligrams of THC twice a day, an edible is the way to do it. You really don't have that kind of dosing power if you're smoking.
Yeah, I think that part of that very discreet thing, I mean, that's absolutely right, that you have people that are coming here. I talk to people all the time that go, well, you know, if I buy an eighth at the dispensary, where am I gonna smoke that?
Exactly.
But an edible, you know, I can be nice and discreet. I can take that, you know, after dinner at a restaurant, and no one's gonna be the wiser. Do you expect any of that to change if we have social use clubs, if we have places where people can go? And are you kind of, are you guys bracing for a potential negative impact on sales?
I don't think so. No, I still think that 50-50 mix is probably where we're going to end up, right? The people here in Colorado, the ones who want to smoke flower, are still buying flower, and the ones who don't are coming in. You've got the tourist market, right, who might really be concerned about coming in and discretion. But I think the people here in Colorado can buy flower or vapes or edibles, go to their home and consume them. So I think kind of the market breakout is really what we'll be looking at across the country. You know, you've got places like Oregon and other states where it's still kind of flower centric, but I think that's going to start shifting once more consistency, cleaner products, you know, all the issues that we had to fight with in Colorado over the last few years, right, to really get these products where we want them. I think once other states fall in line, I think people will start to trust, you know, edibles and concentrates a bit more.
And I think you have states that are kind of divided on how to approach edibles. You have some states that say, we don't want smokable flower anywhere near medical patients, that we want them to use, you know, concentrates, edibles, things like that. Then you have other people that go, we don't want edibles at all. We want to make sure that they don't fall into the hands of children primarily. You hear, you know, stories about more and more children being admitted to, you know, intensive care units because they've ingested some edibles. How do we stop edibles from falling in the hands of kids? Because I know this has to be something that weighs on you.
We, as an industry, I think here in Colorado, we have done an excellent job to do that, right? It's all about stamping, right? Everything is stamped. So if any of our products are outside of the packages, it has the, you know, the universal symbol on it so people can tell that it's got THC in it. They are packaged in child-resistant containers. They are labeled.
I've tried to open some of your packaging before, and it's stumping me.
It's crazy. So, you know, they are labeled properly.
Sure.
We've started the edibles education program 2 or 3 years ago, right? The industry did, where we were handing out leaflets and we were educating the bud tenders on how to talk to patients. At some point, the responsibility has to fall back on the consumer, right? Just like any other controlled substance that you have in your house, you need to make sure that you keep it out of the reach of your children. You know, I've said this a number of times. If there's a quarter or a remote control and a piece of chocolate on your coffee table, your 2-year-old is going to put a quarter or a remote control and a piece of chocolate in their mouth, right? That's what's going to happen. So just like anything else that you want your kids to keep their hands off of, you need to make sure that you keep it in the child-resistant package, and you need to make sure that you keep it out of sight.
And I think there was a lot of it, you know, no one had the answers, right? As parents in Colorado, you didn't, you know, there wasn't the same way that we've grown up, and, you know, if you have a gun, then you keep your gun, you know, away from wherever kids are. So I felt like it took a little bit to catch up, but now as we have these new states, you know, how do you go in and kind of teach, you know, in Nevada, for example, what it took us, you know, a couple years to really dial in? Or do you think that they're doing that legislatively already?
No.
Okay.
You know, one of my goals over the last couple of years has been that, right? Traveling to other states and sitting in front of legislators and people who are making the rules and telling them, this is what we have done, this is what works, this is what hasn't, you know, that hasn't worked. And
instead of making it a moving target, which it feels like it's
everybody
been
wants to recreate the wheel. Colorado has done a very good job, right? They're you know, I know you talk about a number of instances. Even one instance of accidental ingestion, especially by a child, is terrible, right? But there aren't that many, right? Compared to every other substance out there and the things that are in households and the things that happen, the number is still very, very low, right? I mean, I think we sold over 12 million servings, right? Over 1 million bars last year.
Good God.
You know, yeah, I mean, that's just me, right? And I am a small part of this industry, and you know, if you really look at the numbers, they're relatively small. So Nevada's a perfect example, right? There's legislation now to ban edibles. Basically, it's all edibles made with sugar. That's pretty much everything.
Those
right?
are all my favorites.
Yeah, that's almost everything. So we are actively engaged out there trying to get them to understand. You know, and it's
that kids eat things that don't have sugar in them.
Yeah, well, it's not the problem that they're claiming it is, and you can get to the answer without doing what they're doing, right?
Interesting.
Changing the definitions, it's packaging, it's labeling, it's safe storage, it's marking these products when they're out of the package. But
so they're still recognizable.
Banning them completely just sends them to the black market, right? They don't go away. These items do not go away. The cannabis market is already established all across the U.S.
And this is what we've learned, is that prohibition kind of empirically fails.
Correct.
Right. Well, parents, keep your weed way up high. Kids, quit eating stuff if you don't know what it is. All right,
babysitter ever.
I want to bring Alex back in. Let's talk about your favorite ways to consume. So what do you like? You like flower, concentrates, edibles, or topicals? How do you get THC in you?
I'm a flower man.
Yeah?
Now I'm.
Joint bowl, do you solar smoke it with a magnifying glass?
Could you imagine Alex just setting up at a bong?
Haven't had a bong for a while. Just glass.
We should have left it here.
Generally glass. I don't mind a joint if I'm sharing. Probably not my.
It is nice and social.
Yeah. So,
never on federal land, I'm guessing.
Never on federal land, exactly, because that would be illegal.
Yeah, so knock it off, ski bums.
Yeah.
What about you, Bo?
Edibles.
Edibles? What? So is that like how long has it been edibles? Did you start off as like a flower guy? Did you come to edibles later?
The honest truth is...
You would try to convert him. You just talk all of
That's my goal after every episode is
should work for the church.
Smoke some flower.
Testify.
You know, cannabis, the flowers were part of my life for most of my life. Actually, before I got into this industry, I was completely sober. Okay. It's only been recently, over the last few years, knowing what I know now about the endocannabinoid system and the way our bodies work, that I've started consuming cannabinoids again. You know, most of the things I'm taking are raw; they're unactivated, right? So I'm juicing. I'm taking unactivated cannabinoids because I know my body needs it.
When you say juicing, what do you do? Are you getting like fan leaves or flour?
Flour and fan leaves.
You put a whole damn plant. Why do you hate pot so much, Bob?
I grind everything up.
The plants are probably terrified of you.
I can't wait for that infomercial. You know, like we've seen
like
these
the Bassomatic.
Yeah, these juicers everywhere. And just
Jack LaLanne's like, and I take the plant.
Some purple Urkel.
So how long have you been juicing? Because I've heard various reports about
a couple of years
the
now.
efficacy of juicing and whether some people find that they have kind of an adverse reaction to it. Other people swear by it.
Yeah.
Can people go out and buy cannabis juice?
Not yet. I think we want to get there. I think a few dispensaries actually have juice bars, so I guess I take that back because I've heard about that. I don't know if they're still out there, but I know at some point several dispensaries did have juicing bars.
That's pretty cool.
You know, because I have access to it. You know, it's easy for me to grind stuff up. A little protein powder, a little.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what else are you putting in? Yeah.
Protein, it's just like my regular smoothie that I.
Do a little hemp protein powder in there.
Yep.
Keep it all in the genus. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, guys, I want to talk a little bit about so our big focus right now for 2017, giving back to the community. Here we witnessed what may be the last 420 rally.
Yeah.
What can we do to improve the image of cannabis? Especially, I think that it was really tough. There were a lot of people that wanted to point fingers. Some people said, you know, it's these out-of-state tourists. Some people said, you know, it's the industry not being good stewards of a park. Other people blame the organizers. Where do you think it falls?
I think there was a lot of events that happened on 420. You know, I was part of one of them where it was trying to work with the city, you know, the 420 on the block and providing buses for consumption. and doing it the most legal way that we know how, you know, working with the city and getting approval and getting the thumbs up. I think the industry is doing that. We've been trying to, you know, to kind of break that negative stereotype for a lot of years now. You know, I always tell people we're a compliance company first, right? My job is to follow the rules. So we're always trying to do that. You know, unfortunately, the event in the park, it seems to have gotten a bit out of control this year, right? With whatever happened, right? And I'm not sure where the fingers are getting pointed still. You know, hopefully it doesn't go away, and hopefully next year they take measures and work with the city to try to make that event safe, to try to make the people unfrustrated, you know, a little bit more access and more entrances, so you get people in there and kind of cut down on that frustration. And then, you know, it's a learning curve. We're still, you know, we are still an infant, right? This industry in this state, we're still learning day by day how to become a real industry and how to do things the proper way. You know, you look around, and some sort of special event permit would be great, right? You've got all the beer festivals and the alcohol festivals, and you know, at what point are we going to be able to have a cannabis festival where it is regulated, where it is okay, where we can not necessarily sell products but provide products? I'm hoping we get there someday, so we can remove some of that stigma.
Well, I think the hard part is finding the right venue too.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Civic Center Park. There's a history of this rally taking place there. It started off as a protest, where they would say, "Hey, we're going to smoke pot right in front of the Capitol." And you know, I was having a discussion with somebody online. Is, well, if it's not happening at Civic Center Park, where can it happen? You know, you have Governor Hickenlooper that's very opposed to any kind of indoor smoking. So where's an outdoor space? Where are we going to do this? And you guys had a block party?
Off of Broadway, right? We had 6 different venues. You know, a wristband got you in all these different venues, and we provided as legal a space as we could, right? The 420 tour buses, and you know.
I heard there was great comedy.
There was everything. It was fun. That was at the church, though. Right? So that event actually. It was great, right? And I think we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. You know, we worked for a year to try to find an outdoor venue where we could have concerts, where we could have education, and once again, not promoting consumption, but not necessarily policing consumption. We're still walking a fine line, right? To find out what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
And Alex, do you think that there's any place in kind of Denver in 2017 for, you know, a public event where people smoke cannabis?
Well, it seems like there's going to have to be a proper outlet for it. I think the event organizer, as reported by the Denver Post, John Murray, needed to be more on top of their permit. So there's, you know, just an organizational standpoint. And I think, you know, not to sound like an old, but it goes back to sort of watching from afar. But you know, there's you know, a great responsibility conferred on the people in these legal states. It's a great experiment, as our governor has said. I like to think of us then as the laboratory. So that you know, as it moves forward, I think from the consumer side, keeping that in mind. What we're doing is reflecting out and will influence what other states have access, and it's more important than just smoking at home or, you know, at church. You know, it goes to what legalization does to, again, to make our law enforcement better, so they're not having to enforce these prohibition laws, and so that populations of color aren't disproportionately affected any longer. So these are responsibilities that sort of get lost in the sort of minutia of, are we going to have a pot club? You know, like these other positive effects. So
this weird normalization that's occurring.
So I think, you know, there's room for these festivals, but we're going to have to definitely it's a come to Jesus moment, bring it back to church, because on Friday morning when we walked through Civic Center Park, it was, you know, that was unacceptable, and that tainted the whole experience. And so it definitely is a great responsibility. It's going to have to be, you know, optics are important, and the optics were bad. No matter how hard the industry works, which we know they are.
They couldn't pull it together.
Yeah, well, and that, is an event organizer, what's their connection to the larger industry as well. So,
sure.
But the images blast out across the country and doesn't look good for anybody.
Yeah. Absolutely not. All right, speaking of across the country, let's go to the pot quiz.
Oh, hope you studied.
Bob, I'm going to let you go first. You have the unenviable task of competing against
the guy who's actually writing all this stuff. I think I'm at a disadvantage, but okay,
it's going to be brutal. We'll spot you a point. All right, so question number 1, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, drug tunnels, catapults, drones. These are all methods being used to smuggle drugs into the United States that a wall won't prevent.
Correct.
According to the Washington Post, what other method are they using? Is it A, migrating animals, B, narco submarines, C, battering rams, or D, the world's greatest living magician, David Blaine?
The thing that pops into my head right now is, I believe, didn't they just find 2 whales filled with cocaine that washed up on a beach?
Oh, those poor
I know. How crazy is that? Is that considered a narco submarine?
Listen,
But I'm gonna have to go with animals.
Baby beluga.
I want to say all of the above, but I don't think David Blaine is popping drugs into the country. I could be wrong though.
All right, so is that migrating animals is your final answer?
Only because I saw the whales, but yes, that'll be my final answer.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect.
Really?
And I feel so bad for those whales, although they probably had a hell of a time. All right, Alex, you have a chance to steal. Is it B, narco submarine, C, battering rams, or D, David Blaine, who I'm just going to say is the world's greatest living magician.
Oh my God.
That is my opinion.
Chris Angel would take offense to
Listen,
that.
come at me, Chris Angel.
Oh God, he's right there behind you.
Levitating. I'm gonna have to say narco submarines.
That is correct. Narco submarines.
Speaking of whales and narco submarine, I think we both win.
Half a point each. I love the idea that they have submarines, that they're still relevant after all these years. All right. Alex, we have question number 2 for you. Possession of paraphernalia in Hawaii can get you how many years in prison? This is up to how many years? Is it B or A? Is it A, 1 year, B, 2 years, C, 5 years, or D, life?
I know this because I was shocked. It's 5 years.
It is 5 years and up to a $10,000 fine.
Doesn't make any sense, but that was a huge number of penalty for having a glass pipe.
Good job. Good on Hawaii. They're looking at taking it down to a $500 fine.
Yeah,
It's still expensive for Hawaii.
It is.
God,
Oh,
for like a $10 pipe. Good Lord.
exactly. Hey, think about it, Hawaii, before you make
Just spend
the
the
biggest
500
mistake
on
of
a
your
really
life.
great bond.
Here we go.
Jeez.
All right, back to you, Bob. Sheriffs in Massachusetts want an increased tax on marijuana with money going to what? Is it A, school improvements, B, new prisons, C, substance abuse treatment, or D, the New England Patriots?
I don't think the New England Patriots need any
goes to
more help.
Gronk.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it is C, which I find relatively ironic because
That is
the issue
correct.
is opiate, right? So why
Absolutely.
is cannabis now paying for opiate addiction? But okay, that's fine. If that's what you need to get this thing passed, then
To get on
so
the
be
ball.
it. Yeah.
It's really interesting too, because I think Massachusetts is one of the states that's really led in trying to use, medical cannabis as treatment for
to get
opioids
people
addiction.
off
There's
of
a physician there that's been pioneering that. So, hey, Bob, you're on the board. 1 point. All right, back to you, Alex. How many people were arrested by Capitol Police after lighting up joints in Washington, D.C.?
On federal land.
On federal land, and this would not be on 420, but the days later when they had their re-sit-in, whatever it
I
is.
think they're calling it a joint session.
Joints.
Oh man, Alex,
No, I
good.
think it wasn't. Yeah, that's
That's
the
what they're
marketing.
calling it.
Puns and weed. So is it A, 4 people, B, 12, C, 22, or D, due to secondhand smoke, Capitol Police forgot?
It was. It had to be the 22.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect.
Oh.
Bob with a chance to steal. Is it A, 4, or B, 12?
It was 12, and I think didn't they let like 5 or 7 of them go eventually, right?
This
What?
that is incorrect.
That's incorrect. It's 4?
It was the second sit-in, not the original 420, but the second one.
Oh, so that was a joint session. I was on.
So yeah, that is a trick question. We're gonna disregard that one, and we'll just go to our final tiebreaker question. Alex has 2 points, Bob with 1, but you can jump in and steal, as this is worth 2 points.
All right.
Do they have to say their name for tiebreaker?
Yeah, absolutely. So say your name
One of my
before you
favorite
answer.
parts.
Wait, we figured out that we didn't need to do this, but hey, let's keep it going. Say your name before you answer, and that'll be your opportunity. Price is Right rules apply. According to a study from the University of Georgia's Ashley Bradford and W. David Bradford, a nationwide marijuana program could save taxpayers how much in Medicaid prescriptions annually? Price is Right rules apply.
Bob, I believe it's $1 billion.
All right, Alex.
I'd like to say what?
$1.
Oh man!
And Bob's going to take it with 1.1 billion as the final answer. Closest going over. Congratulations. 1.1 billion with the National Marijuana Program.
Huh.
Would you be on board? National marijuana.
Yeah, it's got to come. I've been working on that for a couple of years. We need some sort of federal framework that all the states can follow. I was just reading right before I came up here. Focus, right? One of the groups, they just got accepted by ASTM.
Really?
Right? So there are standards coming for the cannabis industry, and the ASTM voted to implement the focus standard. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
It's amazing. And Alex would be like, well, why would I have moved to Colorado then? Great. All right. Thanks so much to Cannabis editor Alex Pascarello and Incredibles president Bob Esino for joining us. We've had so much fun. If you enjoyed the show, please go online, write a review. We're available on iTunes, Stitcher, and everywhere fine podcasts are sold. For producer Vince, Janae Burris, and the entire Cannabis Show crew, I've been your host, Jake Brown. We'll see you next week.
I'm allowed to lose, I choose to win, I'm all in, I'm calling any posse you'll be raising at the end, I'll say it again, ain't afraid to get in, I'll be going for the jackpot with aces in my hand, I'm raw.